Hello and welcome, Exiles, to the Day 3 update to the Bloodmage. And I just want to open with, a lot of people have been asking me, Lance, this build is not going to work without a Snakepit. Well, good news is the showcases you just got was with my character not wearing a Snakepit, because I did reference it yesterday, but I think people missed it or I didn't highlight it well enough. I said, hey, if you don't have Snakepit, you just need to put Fork instead of +1 Fire Mastery onto your Fireball and onto your Ember Fusillade. This is about like a 10% damage loss, and you have to remember you can replace Snakepit with a rare ring with better stats. For example, here I bought this ring I think for about 1 divine. Probably could have got something that didn't have rarity on it with similar stats for about 10x, but I want to start actually trying to generate some wealth, so I spent extra on getting rarity. But the point I'm trying to point out here is this ring is pretty similar power level to the Snakepit, but you lose the Fork, and then I'm going to gain 40 rarity, and I lose the 10% roughly damage increase from Fire Mastery. That is the change that occurs. I honestly looked at the prices this morning, and it was like 12 divines for a Snakepit. That's insane. 2 divines feels like a good item to me. That's what I bought it at. I looked at the prices, 12 divines. No shot is that worth 12 divines in terms of power for this character. I frankly am going to resell this and buy some other items that I think would be much stronger for the build, because that price just doesn't make sense. So I started the showcase with those clips. Those are all without wearing the Snakepit. Also, I didn't use this, which is something I'm going to point out or highlight as a very good 6-link. Later on, this will become better and better for the character, and actually it'll become downright insane, but that'll be later on when we swap over to Wrathpit scaling. But I want to highlight Atulia's Bloodletting. This thing gives you life tap onto your skill in case you don't have the Blood Magic Helmet, but this is more expensive than the Blood Magic Helmet anyways. But the important factor that it really gives is it gives you a way to get gain damage based on life cost. Right now our skill costs, let's see if I can am I blind? I'm trying to remember where it has the cost at, but I might just be completely blind, or it's just not here and I need to hover it down here. Okay, there we go. 182 life is the current cost of the skill. If I took this and put on here, because it has a 150 multiplier, you'll notice it goes to 250 life cost. At 250 life cost, this is effectively giving us 50% gain damages extra. That is better DPS wise than a Fire Master. As you can see, it's a higher tooltip. But this will become better and better once we swap over to something like Wrathpit, which I think will be tomorrow's video update. Will be a pretty big change to life scaling using Wrathpit, stuff like that, because I'm going to sell the Snakepit, and if I sell the Snakepit, I can afford a Wrathpit, so that will give me the finances. But I want to highlight this as your potential 6-link. Obviously, if you're still using Snakepit, the setup you would use is this. You wouldn't be using Fork, but that's what I swapped out there. I swapped out this one because it's the more expensive support gem and it's slightly weaker, and I wanted to give you a more cost-effective showcase. And then another thing I want to highlight is Sion's Temper. This you swap out for Wild Shards. It's a bit better than Wild Shards 2. Feels a bit more consistent with your Wild Shard procs. Either you have it on Fireball if you want more consistent Fireball Wild Shard procs, or you have it on your Ember Fusillade if you'd rather have more consistent damage. That's the options you have there. That's the main support gem changes between Fireball and Ember Fusillade. It was all about swapping out the +1 Fire Mastery for Fork, and that is the way you can play without Snakepit. And then another thing I want to highlight is yesterday I showcased Living Bomb. Now, initially when I first got the Spellslinger one, I tried out Snap and I was like, this is really good. And then I tried out Living Bomb and it was working. And then I kind of forgot to go back and test Snap to actually compare, but full on Snap's just better than Living Bomb for generating infusions as far as I can tell. And I decided to support it with Boundless Energy and just Remnant pickup range. So that way when it generates fire infusions, they pick up from really far away and I don't have to think about it too much. That's part of the reason when your Fireball gets all those cool procs, that's from the fire infusions being generated from Snap. Ultimately, if you have to choose between a really good wand or a 20% worse wand with Spellslinger, I would do Spellslinger. It feels pretty good. Now I want to explain Spellslinger specifically because it's a little bit of a new thing and it's also a little bit weird, and I've got a lot of people asking why I'm using Ritual Cadence, which I forgot to go over yesterday. So the way Spellslinger works is as you cast skills, it generates energy. It generates energy, it builds up over time, and that energy can then be used to instantly proc all the saved up energy based on the cast time of the skill you're going to proc. Now what happens with invocation skills is I would proc that and it would just shoot them all at once. It'd be like one full blast and all of them would go. And that's not exactly how I want the Snap to be utilized, because I want Snap in order to generate infusions. The way Snap works is it'll proc on enemies that have ignites on them, and it'll chain proc around. So the idea of Ritual of Cadence is if I proc my invocation, it'll then proc over a duration, not spending all of the snaps all at once, but rather as I'm clearing through like an abyss, it'll go proc, 1 second, 2 second proc, 1 second, 2 second proc. And that way it's not something where I have to worry about manually pressing it and having all my energy just spent right on one go in case there's no monsters by or nearby or whatever. I could miss the ability to proc infusions. So it just evens out the consistency at which we generate infusions. That's the idea there. It is not an automatic thing. Spellslinger is something you have to manually press yourself. I have heard from some people chatting that they are using a numlock trick on it. That can work if you're on mouse and keyboard and can do that. Go ahead and look up numlock trick if you don't know what I'm talking about, but it's a way to basically tell the keyboard you're constantly pressing a button without actually pressing it. For me as a controller player, I'm just occasionally pressing it whenever I get to some dense packs, and then it'll do that 2 second cycle where procs, 2 second proc, 2 second 2. You get the idea. Anyways, it's to smooth out the consistency of generating infusions as you're doing like, you know, content and map. That's the idea of Ritual Cadence. That's the idea of Spellslinger. It's getting us infusions. Ultimately, from my experience, is you get so many consistent infusions from Snap. I tried with the reservation of Siphon Elements with and without it, and it felt like I had consistent infusions even without Siphon of Elements on, which means potentially later on I might be able to justify a Calm's Heart, which would be really kind of cool for our DPS and endgame tank scaling. So I might be tempted to look into that, because that would be a lot of fun if we could justify a Calm's Heart. Would be a very cheap Giga Chad option to go, and I'd be interested in that. So we'll see if I end up doing that today. I'm thinking about it. As for the other big change that happened today, you may notice, okay, we are saying, hey, we're letting go of Snakepit, and now we're picking up a new amulet in our amulet slot that is actually quite rare, which is Defiance of Destiny. This amulet is effectively a big shotgun mitigation. If you have a bunch of enemies like knock you out of a sprint and jump on you and you start getting a bunch of chip damage, this thing will pretty much save your life. It is extremely good shotgun mitigation, and the more HP you get on your character, right now we're at 3k, but if we keep going life stacking, we're gonna get 4k, 5k, 6k. It gets that much stronger every time you add more HP. Since I've put this on, I have died a few times because I've been running I literally have not been looking at my map mods. I've been Alk, Val, Go, and I'm running the what you call, I don't remember how to check the Atlas passive tree on this game. I'm running the thing that corrupts it additional time. So basically I'm running whatever map mods and just sending it, and for the most part we've died only a few times since we put Defiance on, and we're gaining XP all the way up to 91, approaching 92, and it's been quite smooth. This has felt amazing. Obviously when you put on Defiance of Destiny, you lose the access point to a +3 gem levels on your amulet, so if you want to go pure DPS you can, but I can't stress enough how good this feels defensively, where it just kind of, there's a level of like chillness that is applied to your experience during the game when you put this on compared to before you had it on. That's just my personal feeling about it. And then another big tank item that I decided to add it in is I looked up the various possession charms. The speed charms, of course, were priced at like 40 or 50 divines, which is just obscene. But I found that the bear charm yesterday I got one for about 1.5D, and I think since I showcased it on stream yesterday, they're up a little bit more, 3, 4, or 5D. But these things give you 20% life while mapping and 20% DR. Very good tank. You can look through the different charms. You might find there's one that's actually pretty good for you that's I'm not specifically showcasing here. So check out the charms. If it's one I'm not mentioning, there's a good chance it might be cheaper if it's not popular, and it might still be very good. A lot of the charms across the board are very strong. So shop around, look at them. There's some good benefits. I went with the bear because it was a cheap one at the time that synergizes well with the character. All right, so those are the big changes. Defensively, Defiance of Destiny, charm. Offensively, you don't need Snakepit. You can use the fork supports. I want to stress that. And then support gems, special support gems like Atuli's Bloodletting and the Scion's Temper. Those things are great, and they're going to become even stronger as we progress the character. And then after all of that, I of course added a bit more levels to the tree, mostly just grabbing crit damage wherever I could. All of my extra passives, I've just been like, okay, I'll grab crit damage. Okay, I'll grab crit damage. Okay, I'll grab crit damage. That's pretty much what I've been doing with my levels. We're going to be doing a pretty big tree change going forward to the life change, which will be tomorrow's update to the character, which will make this character look vastly different. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this update on the Ember Fusillade Fireball Black Flame Blood Mage. I'm gonna probably work with him, try to figure out a more concise name for the description of this character, but it's been a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys are enjoying, and as always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out. Have a good one.